here on Lunch on Caps with Lwazi. You can always listen live on www.capsradio.co.za, and it's at Caps Radio SA on all our social media platforms. Now, one of my favorite features right here is Career Mode with Jack. Jack, before we went on to the break, something very, very important that we were about to engage in was the issue that you're like, something about the internet is free or should be free, and how that is, and some of the things that we're not aware of.
Okay, I'll put it like this. I mean, we've had highways from the N1 to the M1 going across everywhere, and then all of a sudden they put e-tolls. You know?
Okay.
And what are we paying for there? If you can find out what we're paying for there, then that's exactly the same thing we're paying for internet-wise. I mean, the highways are there. It's just they put a bridge above our highways, and they charge us an amount, and we never know where that amount is going. And in theory, that amount should be going to the highways. But
what do you mean? Like, how can it be free? I don't know. Maybe you can bring in Loyiso to explain.
I'm trying to put it in a way that, I mean, e-tolls. You understand e-tolls?
Yes.
Did the e-tolls come first, or did the highways come first?
The highway came first. Oh, I see.
So now, if you think of it that way, it's just that some areas of development haven't been caught up quicker than the internet. The internet started with people buying data, you know, but everything else started with we're charging a bridging fee, and you pay for that, and once you pay for that, then you can travel on our highways. But it's simply the same thing. Internet should be free.
What's your take on that, Loyiso?
I worked at Microsoft and left Microsoft a few years ago.
Yeah.
Whilst I was there, they piloted a program called TV White Spaces.
Okay.
Where they were saying once the spectrum is freed and we migrate to digital, what do they call it? Digital TV signals that we've been talking about for the longest time. It frees up the current frequency that the TV channels frequency is traveling through. Sorry, I'm not an engineer.
Okay. I'm trying to act as if I understand.
But that's the same way that the TV signal is transmitted.
Yes.
You can use that signal to carry information.
So would that work? That should work the same as with the internet.
So remember what we said, internet is just a means of connectivity.
Yes.
Yes. So it means that I don't know a single place in the country where there is no TV signal. It might be poor with bunny ears, but even somewhere in the Payana, like in a mountain somewhere, you can catch a signal of maybe SAPC 1 or something.
Yeah.
It means you can get the internet.
Oh.
And when they did the pricing exercise at the time, it worked out to 20 cents per gig.
Are you serious?
Using that technology. This was 2014. 2013, 2012 has tend to be corrected.
Okay, let's revert back to the internet, right? Does the internet still have a purpose in our lives?
Let's go back to youth development, right?
So I think for me, the best part is solving problems, and I think a lot of us through the academy or the curriculum or the education system we have been through as young people, we've never really been taught how to solve problems. And therefore, the internet has been a space where we operate to look for information, to design and build things. For instance, if you can look at the Americans and the European people, they own the systems when it comes to coding and building platforms. And therefore, that's why you'll find anything that is African, it's still not translated, or it still doesn't speak to who we are as Africans. So therefore, we have all these platforms that have been created, and because we've been produced as consumers, but not so much as producers. That's why we always feed on the content, but not so much to own what is our own as Africans. And the very same thing applies to how all these sort of reality TV show programs are applied. They're doing the same thing with the Kardashians. And you consume the same thing with Moja Love.
Okay.
We don't teach people how to produce.
Let's bring it closer to home and say, who would you rather have teach your child? The professor at university or the University of Google?
Sure, I've been through University of Life, and the University of Life is very rough, right? So you learn by doing. And we have a curriculum whereby we say we teach entrepreneurship, but it's not that, it ceases to exist. And therefore, it becomes a tricky one when it comes to such, because we have rules and regulations that you need to abide to in this country. You still have UMELUS that you need to report to. You still have CAPS that you need to report to. You still have IEB that you need to report to. Therefore, it means that we're not so much flexible in terms of how do we teach our kids the content we're supposed to be teaching them. So, in simple terms, we're teaching young people the skills that they don't need. We're preparing young people for the world that
No longer exists.
no longer exist. And therefore,
that's
we are
deep.
in a space whereby we don't develop young people that can solve problems. That's why you have a dependency syndrome across the young people.
So can I ask a question? Like within the internet space, right? What are prospects for training young people, and what type of mindset is needed? And can the internet be used as a problem-solving type of career path for young people? And lastly, are our young people, do we understand how important or how the internet or the broadness of it, when you talk about things like coding, when you talk about the framework of what needs to be understood by young black people, let me say, with regards to the internet, when you speak about the Europeans are doing things their way and it doesn't speak to the African, and I'll speak to you guys, Jack and Lois, so like what needs to be done, how far are we as Africans, and what career paths does one need to start activating into to be able to put the internet so that it speaks to the African?
I think the best way to answer that question is to talk to someone who works in the industry on a daily basis, to tell us what they do on a daily basis and how much of it can be influenced to improve education of young people.
The internet has democratized information and opportunity. So how, before I bring it home to what I do on the daily, what are the big opportunities? For one, it means that your customers are no longer the people on your block or in the city. Literally, you are now dealing in euros and dollars and Japanese yen and Aussie dollars, because globally that is your audience, that's who your customer is, and you can deliver all kinds of services using the internet, whether that be consulting using whatever knowledge you have, right? Look at what we're doing now.
Yeah.
Look at what we are leveraging the internet
We're online.
right now. We are online, right? Free to anybody who can listen to us
From
anywhere in the world.
That's so true.
You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
same thing applies to us. So what should the youth be doing? If you're a content creator, don't just look at, will ETV buy my stuff? Will SABC buy my stuff? Who is the global audience? There's a young kid who just made $3 million from playing Fortnite. You know, Fortnite is a game.
That online game.
Online game, yes. This is the world he's talking about. Were you telling your kids, go to school, you can learn how to remember these arbitrary facts, when there's Google that'll tell you random facts. Who cares what the date was when XYZ happened? Google will tell you. Learn how to problem solve. So that's on the first issue. On my day-to-day, I run a cyber security company. We've been running for 5 years. The internet is my daily bread because the threats come from the internet.
Yes.
Hackers, ransomware, and but my customers need to be connected. Us sitting here, you need to be connected to the internet. But by you being connected to the internet means the internet is connected to you.
Oh, and we so often forget that.
Yes. So that's how I make a living, right? I leverage the internet to make a living. But the opportunity for me and for the country as a whole is that we can now render services to people outside the country. That's pushing this thing of foreign direct investment. So we talk about foreign direct investment and white capital is this big thing that we have no influence over.
Yes.
If you grow your audience in the US or in Eastern Europe, and you start getting Eastern Europe advertisers advertising on your platform, it's a South African company. You are bringing euros into the country. So the future of our country and turning this thing around is in our hands. And the youth are great for this because they are creative, they have the time, they have the energy. You know, there's lots of things that they can do.
Do you think that is happening though?
Not as
If fast enough, or what are the trends that you pick up? What are the patterns? What I want to know, are young people moving away from this thing of I want to study to be a doctor or marketer, or do we understand that how vast, when you speak about cybersecurity, it can go as far as, and you're right, you can work from here service a European person. Do young people understand, or are we a society that says if I'm online it's all social media?
You know, we're drowning in opportunity, and we are actually drowning and dying for lack of actioning the opportunity. It took Black Panther to come back and tell us that Ingubo Lesotho are really dope. It takes Beyonce to tell us that Gwara Gwara is an it dance. If BMW had to go and get to Gok Ester to go and design his 7 Series.
Oh, yeah.
Gok Ester, BMW all the way from Germany. Why the hell are we not? I know why. Well, part of it is because we've been taught to consume and not produce. It's hard to produce. You have to take a long-term view. It's very hard to produce. But we have opportunity. We have the skill. We are just not
So I'm going to bring you in there.
Sure.
What's your take on that?
So, truth be told, right, things like entrepreneurship are not dressed in a way an African child can relate to.
What do you mean by that? Just elaborate that a bit. Because I'm gonna think to myself, someone thinks, but I'm going to say there is some kind of market here.
So it's still too far-fetched, right?
Okay.
So think about Umkosi, that we grew up eating some vegetables, some banana, and right?
Yeah.
That person has fed and raised a lot of kids. Some even went to university, right?
Absolutely.
So simply because of the curriculum we have at schools that talks about entrepreneurship, typical science, IT students or geography students are mostly isolated to experience this thing called entrepreneurship. And entrepreneurship cuts across all subjects. I myself have taught entrepreneurship for 2 years in a school. I've taught entrepreneurship in a maths class. I've taught entrepreneurship in a physical science class. That alone is about the change of mindset. Then you are addressing this thing called entrepreneurship in a manner it speaks to an African child. We still have a curriculum that both maybe our sisters or mothers were taught. And it has never really changed. That's where the nitty-gritty of the whole thing needs to start, right?
We need to nurture our curriculum, and it needs to be updated and relevant for the world we're living in now.
Because the problems that we live in now are much more of social problems, right? And therefore, if you teach young people how to think and act entrepreneurial at a very young age, some of these problems will cease to exist.
Oh, yes.
So think about the Kenyan boy. No, is it from Kenya? The one from African Leadership Academy, who harnessed the wind. The boy who harnessed the wind. The movie from Netflix. During difficult times, right? Out of nowhere, he had to think about. We live in an environment whereby we have to survive through water because dad is a farmer, and there was no rain in the area for quite some time. And through reading about how can we generate water for us to be sustainable enough, he realized that the only thing that I needed was wind.
Okay.
And therefore he was able to plant windmills whereby they can able to get the water and farmers can be able to work. So that alone talks to an African context.
Oh, yes.
Because now we live in a world whereby we are fed a lot of content that doesn't speak to an African child. For instance, think about your accounting textbooks. It'll talk about the Joes and Joe's sons, right? But if you bring entrepreneurship, we've got what you call market day, typical market day at schools, right? That market day, you can teach entrepreneurship, you can teach problem solving, you can teach accounting, you can teach production, you can teach the making of things in one key subject. You can bring mathematics in that particular classroom, but simply because we have a curriculum that is so isolated and not so much integrated, we still teach our kids in silos. That's where the problem is.
All right, we're going to take a short break right now. It's exactly 28 minutes after 2. We're going to take a short break and get right back. When we get right back, I want to speak a little bit more about the company, Clarofor, and on a daily basis, and what cybersecurity is. Let's take a short break.
Lunch on Cap.